Tighten those laces, straighten that headband. You are listening to CHGO Marathon, a podcast about the culture, community, and challenge of the world's fourth largest marathon. CHGO Marathon is brought to you by Goose Island, the official beer of CHGO, and the beer you'll be drinking when you cross that finish line on October 8th. Go pay them a visit when you're in town for the marathon, and you can check out their locations at gooseisland.com/locations. Less than 3 weeks to go. What's up, everyone? I am Kevin Kaduk, head of content at CHGO and a 2023 Chicago Marathon entrant. I want to thank everyone for their support. I've been having a blast doing this podcast, and I love hearing from each one of you who are listening to this on your runs, during your strength sessions, in your car. It's been really cool to hear from everyone all over the world, literally. Even cooler, thanks to the people who have supported the charity that I'm running for, Cal's Angels. It's really, really cool to get those emails and see, someone throw any amount in there. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. Definitely go back and check out those past episodes. A lot of great guests, from race director Carrie Pankowski to YouTube star Kofuzi, to Chicago Cubs pitcher Ryan Dempster. It's been really great. One last bit of housekeeping. I've been hearing from people like, are we going to get together, CHGO Marathon listeners, on Friday or Saturday before the podcast? If you're interested, make sure you hit me up. I'm on all the different platforms. You can hit me up on Twitter at Kevin Kaduk and tell me that you might be interested. I'm thinking about maybe we can get together at the Goose Island Tap Room or something else. Maybe, even just do a shakeout run or tag on with the Kofuzi run. We'll figure it out, but I'm looking forward to meeting, the connections that I've made throughout this podcast, because that has definitely been one of the real highlights of training for this marathon, and we're almost there. So anyway, this week's guest, I'm really excited for this one, and I want to thank you for coming in, is Carlos Jaramillo. He is a man of many hats here in Chicago. He gets around. He knows a lot of people. And he is a very busy man this time of year, so I really want to thank you again for coming in. But real quick thumbnail here. You are the organizer of the famous Pilsen race stop aid station at mile 19, which is really one of the highlights on the course. You're also the founder of the Carrera de los Muertos 5K in Pilsen, which will be celebrating its 16th edition on October 28th. And you can find more information on that at unoraceofthedead.org. And then you're also a runner yourself. You're a veteran of the Chicago, New York, Paris, and Seattle marathons. And we're going to be talking about all three of those areas as we kind of go through this, 40, 45 minutes. But let's, you also have a day job too. So let's start there. I want to know, where you're from, how you got into running, all that good stuff.
Oof, how much time do we have? Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. So, great to be here, and feel honored, to be on a podcast that, that included the Godfather himself, Carrie Pankowski. The man, the myth, the legend, Ryan Dempster. And so, truly an honor. My story, wow. Born and raised in Chicago, Southsider, Little Village to Gage Park. And then after elementary school, parents moved us out to southwest suburbs. Went to a high school called Lincoln Way. Sometimes people ask me, which Lincoln Way? East, west, central? And I was
before the split.
I was like, just Lincoln Way. It was before the split. So my high school was massive, and it was a big culture shock to, go from, inner city, Gage Park, southwest side of the city to to an area that was predominantly, white and very few Latinos. Went back to St. Xavier, back to the city for college. My major was history and secondary education. I was between art, graphic design, and education, and ended up going the education route. So I taught history fresh out of college, moved back to the city. I felt like I never really left outside of high school, and bought my house in Garfield Ridge, so southwest edge of the city, just west of Midway. And I've been living there for the past several years. After teaching for a little bit of time, I transitioned to more an administrative role with a large charter school operator. And, in college, I think I should add, in college, I played soccer. So coming from a big soccer family, my dad is a tremendous soccer player. He's 63 and he still, can whoop some of these young kids' butts. He met my mom through soccer. My grandfather on my mom's side owned a soccer team. And so soccer has played a really big role in our family. I was fortunate enough to have a small scholarship to play at St. Xavier over there. But I was on the 5-year university plan, not the 4-year one. And so my last year of school, I'll always remember cross-country coach, saying, hey, you're not going to be in soccer anymore because your eligibility is over, but, I see that you're still going to be in school. How about giving cross-country a shot? And I was like, absolutely not. I've never ran in my life. In soccer, anytime you had a run, that was like a punishment. So I was like, no, thank you. And they're like, well, you're not going to have your soccer scholarship anymore. Might as well come out. And if I could give you some money, why not? I was like, sign me up. That's all I needed to hear. And so I'll always remember I did like a 6-mile timed run through the woods somewhere and in my soccer shorts and like, my random, I don't know, Jordans. I don't know what I had on at that time. And I was like, there's no way in hell that I'm going to make this team. Sure enough, after the run, I was beat red and I'm like, so? And he's like, you'll do. I'll give you a call in a few weeks. And I was like, really? That was it? And what had happened was that he had gotten the thumbs up to kickstart the cross-country program very late in the game. And so he just needed bodies essentially, you know? And so I was one of those few bodies that he recruited because he was, he literally got the thumbs up, weeks before the start of the school and whatnot. So, but that was it, man. I got hooked. That was the genesis
of Carlos the runner.
Yeah, I got hooked into running. I dropped like 20 pounds because we were running, 70 miles a week. We'd wake up, run, 4 or 5 miles before school, shower, go to class. And in the afternoons, another 7 to 10 miles. And, our races were Fridays or Saturdays. And I got hooked. I ran the CHGO Marathon in 06. At that time, it was the LaSalle Bank Marathon. And, I just remember just loving it, loving the neighborhoods, loving, the Lakeview area, Boys Town, Little Italy. But when I came through Pilsen, I was like, this is it right here. Like, this is my favorite. And that kind of catapulted so much of my, what I've kind of driven or segued into, after that. But yes, CHGO Marathon 06 was definitely the genesis, as you mentioned, for so many things. And me running at St. Xavier that last year in 04, 05, really catapulted so much after that.
Yeah. So for those people listening who may be coming to Chicago for the first time and don't know a lot about the city, Pilsen is a neighborhood that's heavily Mexican-American, has a lot of Latino culture. And when you run through at mile 19, you can definitely tell where you're at. And it's one of the highlights on the course. And we're going to get into kind of what goes into organizing that aid station a little later. But I do want to talk to you about the 2006 CHGO Marathon. Now, you've run 3 other marathons in different cities since then, but that is your only CHGO Marathon. How did that race go?
I loved it. Coincidentally, it's my fastest race, and I can tell you why. The reason why I didn't PR in every single race after that, but CHGO, I did 3:26. Wow. And it was my first one, so like I didn't know as far as a goal was like what to aim for. So I was like, I guess if I do sub 3:30, I think that's good, right? So whenever you see first timers or whenever I ask someone like, what's your goal for your first ever? And then they say, I just want to finish. Like, no, you got to have a time. You got to have a goal.
So that's how if you go back to episode 1 of this podcast, that's how I started. And now I'm kind of like, all right, I think I'm like, I don't want, I'm like almost hesitant to put this out there, but like, I kind of want to hit like 435 or 440. Make it
public. Yeah. Make it
so I think I can get there. I think we're trending that direction.
Yeah.
But I'm still nervous about it.
Oh, and it's perfectly normal. But like the training is there, and especially after you did your half, after you did your 20 miler, the work is done right there. Like your body is ready. Like after you did a 20 miler, you can legit do a marathon, this weekend or whatnot. But yeah, you got to have a goal. So I'm super excited to hear that that's your goal. That's a 4:30, 4:35 is a solid time. You know, it's nothing to, you know, be down about.
I think it's going to come down to the weather. I do. Like if it's,
always
a hot day, like then it's all off the table.
It always does. In 06, I had like the perfect running weather. I'll always remember it was like 40-degree weather, light sprinkles, but you know, nothing too crazy, and 40-degree weather for a runner. Perfect. You know, perfect. And no, I just loved it. It was just the catalyst for me to keep that bug going. And after Chicago, I wanted to do more runs, and I signed up for New York in the lottery the year after, and I didn't get in, but I got in 08, and you know, I was super excited. But then I saw when the date was, and it was literally the day after the 5K that, you know, you mentioned that I created, and I was like, oh my God, can I physically, logistically do this? And you know, so that's why my time for New York in 08 wasn't necessarily the best, but yeah.
So where are you at with your marathon running now? I mean, because you're a busy guy, is it impossible for you to squeeze in, or?
So I'm 41 now, so I think I should start there, because, you know, coming from,
it's usually when everyone starts, right? Like
for longer distance, I feel like you run into more and more people that get into longer distance.
We have nothing better to do. Yeah.
But it's such a great, you know, the endorphins kick in, and you know, especially if you run in the morning, you have so much energy for the rest of the day. But you know, I mentioned 41 because, you know, I've had 3 surgeries in my legs. So I've had 3 ACL surgeries on my right, all soccer related, not running. So not trying to scare anyone out there. All soccer related, ACL, meniscus, and then I broke my tibia fibula on my left leg. Once again, through soccer. It's just a drug. Like, there's no other way to put it. Soccer is a drug. Sports is a drug.
Is that a dirty play or just
yeah, definitely. Most of my injuries are dirty plays. But I mean, that's the game. You know, I wouldn't change anything, you know, I and whatnot. But as a result, my knees, I feel like as I've gotten older and older, they've gotten worse and worse. But I tell you this much, like I'm the oldest of 5 boys, and you know, my younger brothers, sometimes they're every once in a while they're like, hey, when's our next marathon? You know, I've ran 3 marathons with one of my brothers, and 2 marathons with one of my brothers, and he's 10 years younger than me. And I don't know, like I feel like, you know, I'm getting the bug again. You know, I feel like I have unfinished business. You know, 3:26 for my first marathon versus my other ones. I'm like, like I can beat the 3:26 at least.
Now that's the 40-year-old talking, right?
That's the
40-year-old talking. I want to do as well as I did when I was 23 or 24.
Yeah, and my body's saying otherwise, you know, definitely. But we'll see. And plus, you know, I'm you know, fortunate enough that my wife is expecting, and you know, so you start thinking about that as well. Like, you know, what if you get a little one, and you know, little one wants to run and be active, and you know, you want to show him that, like, man, my old man, he still got it, you know, he's still running around, he's still in shape. So, you know, you start thinking about that stuff as well.
So it might be in the cards. I will say, when you do have a little one, you'll want to get running because it is guaranteed time out of the house. You know, like your wife can't say, no, don't go exercise. So, you know,
I'll keep that in mind.
That's a tip. Yeah. Hey, I want to give a shout out to Craig, who says, I ran my first marathon this past weekend, that Fox Valley Marathon in St. Charles, which actually our coworker Jared did the 20 miles in preparation for the Chicago Marathon. Craig says, thanks for doing this podcast. It helped me get across the finish line. That is awesome. Congratulations, Craig. Hope you had a great time, and we're really happy with how you finished. Shout out to Baloney Fonseca, who is a dedicated listener. He says, K-Duck also to goat, 2 goats. And that's in response to Christopher King, who said, Carlos, the goat. You got 3 goats.
Shout out to Chris. I see you, man.
Yeah. So, so you run the race in 2006, and you mentioned you got the bug, and that directly led to you wanting to start the 5K.
Yeah.
And go through that for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, I mentioned, you know, being an educator and transitioning to an administrator for a large charter school network. And, you know, like many schools, you know, you kind of circle around and you huddle and you say, how can we raise money, you know, for our after school programs, for our sports and all that. And so, you know, people, and this is back in 07. So I was young young and naive, full of ready to conquer the world and whatnot, 24, 25 years old. And, you know, people were throwing out, how about we sell cookies and sell world's finest chocolate, which, you know, shout out to world's finest chocolate.
I've sold a few of those bars back in the day.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you're Chicagoan, like if it's like a rite of passage, you've sold your share. You know, people were throwing out, let's do car washes and stuff, you know. But, you know, having ran Chicago in 06, I was like, why don't we do a race, man? Why don't we do a 5K race? And people were like, can we do that? And I'm like, how hard can it be, man? Like it's got to be easy, you know? And so little did I know just how much work goes into, you know, doing a 5K race, and let alone in a major city, you know? So you got to work with, you know, various city agencies, your aldermen, CPD, CFD, CTA, you know, all the logistical stuff, ordering T-shirts, you know, like I remember that first year, you know, you're placing orders for stuff, and you're just like, I have like 20 people signed up for this race, and yet the vendors are asking me, I have to submit a T-shirt order now for a race that's happening a month away. And you're just like, why can't we order it like, you know, days before the event, works, you know? Yeah. And so they're like, well, how many T-shirts are you going to order? And I'm like, I really do think we're going to get 3,000 runners for this first year. You know, how hard can it be? I see Nike doing it through their runs, and, you know, I think we can do it. And so that first year I ordered 3,000 shirts. I think, you know, final totals were like, we had like 500 runners. And so there was a lot of T-shirts left over. And there
was a big donation to somewhere, I would guess, after that.
I mean, we kept those shirts and we recycled them for next year. Okay. For the following year, for sure. We're like, we can't let these go to waste. But I mean, easily the most stressful period of my life. I think that's when I started getting white hair from that moment on in 07, just because I was in way over my head. But I knew I had something special. We had something special. Like, you know, having started running in 04, 05 and doing CHGO Marathon in 06, I had ran a lot of local races, you know, and so a lot of the races were up along the lakefront or in the suburbs, but there were very, very few races inside the city within the neighborhoods, which, you know, Chicago is all about neighborhoods, and that the neighborhoods is what makes Chicago special. And I was like, I want to do one in Pilsen, because I just remember the energy that I had running through 18th Street in mile 19. And we had a school in Pilsen, so it worked out perfectly. That was the backdrop for the race. And I knew I wanted to celebrate Latino culture, you know, and you know, I didn't want runners to just go run for a worthy cause, get a T-shirt, a banana, get some water, and then go home, like, and then throw away the shirt and never wear it again. Like, no, I wanted to do something super special. And so for me at that time, you know, I wanted to do something centered around Dia de los Muertos. And, you know, to me, that's what I wanted to do. And so people were trying to pronounce it in those first few years. Like, how do you pronounce it? And then I was like, it's Race of the Dead. Yeah. You know, it's centered around this very unique pre-Hispanic, you know, tradition in our culture. And, but I didn't want to stop there. Like, I felt like, what can we do to keep separating ourselves from other races? You know, the concept is Dia de los Muertos, but I feel like it's also a celebration of life. It's a celebration of our community. Pilsen is the beautiful backdrop for the race, but, you know, let's not stop there. You know, so after the run, I wanted folks to enjoy themselves, and I was like, let's have a market, and let's give people like tacos and the opportunity to buy like pozole and Mexican food, and people be like, wait up, you're gonna run and burn calories, run 3 miles, and then you want people to gain them right back? And
that's the idea.
Right? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, it's for the kids. It's a fundraiser, you know, like, no, it's all about having a good time, you know? So we didn't stop there. We added that. And I knew I didn't want to have medals. You know, a lot of runs, you get your medals and for your top awards, like they give you, you know, something. And I was like, let's do something outside of the box. And so I had ran, you know, a race called the Quarrymen 10 miler in Lamont. So for all you runners out there, shout out to Quarrymen Challenge, Quarrymen, you know, 10 miler in Lamont. easily the hardest race that I've done outside of running a marathon. But it's also super fun and challenging because Lamont, Illinois, if you guys have ever traveled over there, it's not flat.
Right.
Like it's nothing but rolling hills. And
it's the only hills in Illinois.
Basically, basically the only hills. Like people talk about Mount Roosevelt,
right.
and that's a cute, incline, and it's
the only reason it's challenging is because it's at the 26th
It's
mile.
at the very end, and so I definitely feel that because your quads and whatnot are burning. But in Lamont, sign up. It's I'm giving them a free plug over here, so they need to hit me up. They say, hey, thank you for that plug. But super challenging race. But in 06 I ran it, and I came in like second or third in my age division, and they gave me like this piece of rock, the quarrymen. So it said second place, age division winner, and I thought it was the coolest freaking thing ever. I was like, oh, I love it, and I, remember showing it to my grandmother and my mom. I ended up giving it to my grandmother, and I just loved it. So I was like, we got to do something different here. So that's when I thought of the idea of doing a calavera, doing a skull, and I wish I should have brought one over. But those are awards, calaveras, skulls that are decorated by
cool.
Local artists, and so shout out to Tony Valenzuela. But that was, it's just how can we keep making it more and more unique, because the racing in Chicago is super popular. There's plenty of races. There's plenty of cool races. So how can you continue to separate yourself?
Yeah. Has your growth been pretty just like a steady climb, or?
Yeah, we've been very, very fortunate in that regard. But, I think it's a testament to, constantly pushing the envelope, because let's face it, right? Like when you run a 5K race, you get hooked into running more and more. And then what do you want to do? You want to do longer distances. You want to go from a 5K and graduate to an 8K or a 10K, and then a half marathon, and eventually a full marathon. And then you want to do your ultra marathons. Now I'm just playing. If you do that stuff, like
you're different.
Definitely not doing ultra
yeah.
Yeah, you're a different breed of people for those folks. But so that it's like a journey, right? Through it's a progression. And so in my thinking, I'm like, okay, if folks are gonna graduate to other longer distances, if they can only run one 5K race, let it be ours. And so I don't want folks to say, man, but I did that race for the last 4 or 5 years. It's always the same stuff. I did that, like time to do something different. No, I want them to keep coming and thinking like, no, last year they had lowriders at the finish line. So what are they going to have next? The other year they had Ozzie Guillen, who was the Grand Marshal, and so what are they? The shirts continue to be very, very cool and different. Like, what are they going to do this year? And so that's, wanting to make it, fun and unique and fresh every single year, so that folks want to, keep coming down to Pilsen.
Yeah. How many runners will you have this year, like projected?
Yeah. So, I was just talking to, my buddy, Sinue about it, but we're very blessed in the sense that, just yesterday we hit 2,700 runners. Wow. And we're still a month and a half out, or less than a month and a half out from the run. So we're expecting to hit pretty close to 6,000 runners this year. Amazing. Which would be our largest field ever. Okay. Our largest field to date was right before the pandemic. We had like 5,500 runners. So we're
took you a little while to get back.
Yeah, the pandemic really did a number on races, and well, you can dive into that, and that's a whole separate discussion. Yeah. But no, we're extremely blessed, and we get runners now from over 25 states, which is really, really cool. Texas, California, Florida, all over the Midwest, outside of the country as well, because folks wear the shirts and they travel with it, to different countries, and people will be like, where is that? And that's, I really love, when people send us the pictures of them rocking the shirt, and, Antarctica, Africa, and all that. And so, we're blessed to have folks that come from, different countries as well. And the race has become like 63% female. So everything that I design or we design, we want to make sure that, our female population, gravitates to it. I show a lot of stuff to like my wife or my coworkers and my colleagues. And I'm like, what do you guys think of this? Cause I want to make sure that they think it's cool as well, and all that.
So like now every man listening to this podcast is going to unoraceofthedead.org to sign up after hearing that statistic. I was just about to say,
I was like, that's pretty cool.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I've thought to myself, I was like, how can we market to, you know, to dating sites or to guys and say, if you're single, you know, come on down to Carrera de los
like
Muertos,
the old
you
St.
know?
Pat's block party. That was like their whole thing. Like how many people met at the block party and ended up getting married. Like they used to have, like,
which is, it's happened before. People have, you know, have sent us pictures and said like, hey, we met at Carrera and you know, this is our wedding picture. Margaret and Enrique Rivera from Venados Running Club, they met at Carrera, which is super, super cool, you know? So.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. It's definitely one of the premier 5Ks in the city, and I'd encourage anyone to go run that. And now I might have to now that I'm back into running.
Hit us up. We got you.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get into your Chicago Marathon participation. I think kind of why we invited you in here, because we want to know what goes into putting on the Pilsen aid station, just really running any aid station, but also, you know, one like this that incorporates entertainment and other things. You started in 2009, and can you take me through that story?
Yeah. So, you know, I mentioned at the very beginning, Carey Pinkowski being, you know, the godfather, right? So, I had created Carrera de los Muertos back in 2007. And so back at that time, anyone that put together an event in Chicago had to participate in this kind of, you know, race director meeting that the city put together, OEMC and those departments. And so there I was in, you know, 08, 09 as, you know, this young kid in a room full of, you know, folks that put together some of Chicago's biggest running events, you know, and at that time we were, you know, 700-800 runners. And, you know, so it's one by one, people were introducing themselves, and out in the corner is Carey Pinkowski. And now I'm just like, I need to meet him. I need to go up to him. And so I waited for the meeting to end, went up to him, and I was like, big fan of yours. You know, I ran Chicago. I loved it. I have this small race in Pilsen. Would love to grab lunch with you and, you know, kind of pick your brain. But, you know, would also love to get involved with the marathon in any way that I can, you know, and volunteer. And he couldn't be, you know, more nicer to me. And he's always been that way. And we grabbed lunch, and the rest is history. Afterwards, you know, I got a call, you know, from someone at CEM that the folks that put on the marathon, and they're like, hey, we need a new aid station captain for Pilsen and 18th Street. And I'm just like, oh, cool. and they're like, are you interested? And I was like, oh my God, it's literally 2 weeks before my 5K race. And I'm, you know, inundated with work because it's just me and a handful of people that organize it. But I didn't want to pass up the opportunity. I was like, man, if I tell them no, who knows if they'll ever call me again. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. You know, not knowing anything that goes on to put an aid station together. So it was trial by fire, you know, like they can talk a lot about like, you got to do this and you're going to do this, but nothing prepares you for jumping in head first that race day with 40,000 plus runners. And it was a very rude awakening as far as like all the logistics and operations and the planning that goes on with it. So, you know, the aid stations pre-pandemic had, you know, 250 to 300 volunteers easily. And so, but you don't know these people, right? Like the marathon helps you.
They just show up that morning.
Yeah. The marathon, you know, helps you in identifying groups that, you know, want to help out. But you're just kind of starting to meet like the group leaders and the coaches that put together and organize these groups, but you don't really know them. And so the day of, you have, you know, a lot of high school students, a lot of university students, and, you know, high school students are great. University students are great if they have really good leaders and coaches and teachers kind of leading them. And, you know, in those early years, like, yeah, it's a learning experience for me, you know, but like you had a lot of high school students that, you know, are very energetic at the beginning. And then they just kind of fizzle out. And so you're trying to motivate them at like our peak period when you can't even cross the street because it's so thick with runners. And it's like, hey man, we only have a few more hours to go. And in your head, you're thinking like, we're not even halfway done, man. And how can I keep motivating these kids, you know? And I turn around and, you know, you have these kids making out over here or one slumped on the sidewalk like this. And I'm just like, we got 6 hours left to go. How do we motivate them, you know? But that's why relationship building is so important. So after that first year, I'm like, I need to build, a rapport and build my network here. And so you start meeting folks from UIC and different high schools and different local organizations. And I'm like, we have to recruit our groups, so the marathon will continue to provide you groups, and they help. Because don't get me wrong, a lot of these groups that come out are awesome, very dedicated people, and they'll help you from the beginning to the end. But Pilsen is mile 19, so I show up at 3:30, 4 a.m. in the morning, and our regular volunteers show up at 6 a.m. And it's first come, first serve, because they all want the jacket, they all want the gear, and so they're hot. They start out hot and heavy, and so it's up to us to kind of put them to work right away. And essentially, we're providing water, Gatorade, and bananas at our station. And so it's a big operation, right? Like, you need as many volunteers as possible, because if you're having a field of 45,000 runners, like, you need as many folks, cutting up bananas and doing layers of water, and so it's a big undertaking. But, I knew apart from our volunteer efforts and all that, I was like, we have to make this fun, because 40,000 plus runners, so many of them are coming from out of state, out of the country. So many of them are never going to come back to Chicago. But if this is their last time, the first and only time that they're going to come here to Chicago, let's give them a kick-ass experience here in Chicago. Let's give them such a positive one where they say, like, Chicago was amazing. I want to go back there again at some point. And I want to run Chicago, and I want to visit the neighborhoods and all that. So I knew, running Chicago in 06, how much fun I had running through Boys Town. They had the cheerleaders, and, they had the music going, and I wanted to replicate that. I wanted to do our own spin and give it like a Latino flair, a Latino, flair to it. And so I was like, we got to have a DJ playing house music, because, anyone from Chicago, you love house music, right? And so our DJ plays house music, Spanish music, cumbia, bachata, merengue, and other sorts of music that I feel are reflective of us and our community. But I knew I wanted to get a mariachi, folkloric dancers, Aztec dancers. I asked the marathon, like, can I get a stage? And I was like, what if they tell me no, we'll find a place or something like that. But they were super cool about it. Like, yeah, we got you. And so obviously just over time, we just kind of added more and more to it, and I feel like that's, if people were to ask me what the Pilsen aid station, or Pilsen in general, is the day of the marathon, I just tell them it's one big party.
For sure. Sarah, I think this is a good time to we actually have some video clips to show. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to see this right now. If you're listening to the podcast, check us out on youtube.com/CHGO Sports. You can hit play, Sarah. What are the big puppets called?
Mojigangas.
Okay.
So they're regional, regional from the Michoacan area of Mexico, but you see them in other places as well. But essentially, they're giant puppets. But they become very, very popular, and they depending on the time of the year or the holiday, they kind of do different types of ones. And
Gotcha.
So you see one with a Catrín, or with that has more of a Dia de Muertos vibe to it.
Well, if you have him this year, I'm going to just pretend that I'm in the opening scene of Skyfall, the James Bond movie. So I think it was Skyfall. Here's the mariachi band clip. And then I think you have the Azteca dancers here. Is that right? So you have a wide variety, like you mentioned, of entertainment. What goes into recruiting and the actual, I guess, ideation and all that?
It's very grassroots. Very grassroots. It's literally, me reaching out to, folks that I know, relationships that I have, and saying, like, hey, we have the marathon coming up in a few weeks. And we want to give the runner something special. We want to give the spectators something special, because, not only, folks that are running, but Pilsen gets packed with family members, folks that, know Pilsen is popping. And so they try to come out as well. And so it gets very, very jam packed. And so the clips that you see are right at the turn of Blue Island turning onto 18th Street. And yeah, it becomes very, very just jam packed there. But yeah, as far as like building it's literally, I start right around now, to tell you the truth. You know, what are we at? Less than 3 weeks away. And, I start calling up folks and, seeing who's available. And I try to just break it up into shifts. So like, obviously early on you get your, your speedsters. I'll be honest, when the Kenyans and the Ethiopians, the elites pass by, we don't really have too many musical in it. Yeah, because it's we're obviously just setting up, but our entertainment is more so for like the folks right after them, and so I try to space it off where it's like a mariachi group will come in from like, let's say 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Another group from 10 to 11 and 11 to 12, and just kind of try to space them out. But it's really me just reaching out to my network of folks and seeing who's available to help out and give the runners a very cool, positive, lasting experience.
Well, even just watching the clips, like it excites me right now on whatever today is, September 19th. And it's like, I want to go out there, and it's energizing. I can only imagine what it's like when you're 19 miles into a marathon. It's got to give you a little bit of boost and an extra kick. And obviously you still have 7 miles to go. But, Pilsen's probably after a lot of where people, that kind of gets into the part of the race where maybe the families have already started heading towards the finish because they saw you early. So to have that at mile 19 is pretty big.
It is. I mean, I just, go back to my experience and that's when you hear the stories, between mile 19, 20, 21 of people hitting the wall. And so it's something that I tell our volunteers. I'm like, look, we have over 40,000 runners coming, and if they want to stop after Pilsen and Chinatown, they can go right ahead and do so. If they want to stop right before and Little Italy, they can do so. But if they come through our station, we can have them stop over here. We got to provide them with that energy. And to be honest, we do this right. I think we can give them the energy they need to get them through that finish line. And outside of our station, it's so awesome to see all the neighbors and people, creating their own cheer stations up along 18th Street and Halsted. And, they have their own DJs that, are playing, house music. You see Mexican flags, being waved, and, people with funny signs and just, it's just very contagious. And I think that's what it's about.
Now, I've heard rumors that I might be able to get a shot of Patron.
I can neither, say that's a fact nor deny it.
Confirm nor deny.
Yeah, but what I can say is that doesn't happen in our aid station. That I can say with without a doubt. But running a marathon, that's one of the cool things about, like, you see the most random things when you run a marathon. And so I've seen people run barefoot whole 26.2 miles, which I think
that's crazy.
I've seen people wearing, Mickey and Minnie Mouse suits. I've seen, people, cross the finish line and it's like a war zone, like where they're like disillusioned because they're so dehydrated. Right. And, when I crossed the finish line in Paris, like I had to go to the medical tent because I hadn't hit any walls ever before from my previous 3 marathons, but Paris, my last one in 2019, I made the dumb decision, this is a tip. I made a dumb decision, 6 miles before the finish line of not taking my last gel because I was like, I'm so close. I feel good. You know what? Let's just keep going. Nope. Within minutes, like my body just crashed and my splits just went down, those last few, and I felt like I crawled to the finish line, and they looked at me. I was pale white. My mom said I look like E.T. when they find E.T.
Oh,
like
no.
laying in the ground. That's how pale I was. And yeah, I had to go to the medical tent for, about like 15, 20 minutes to get rehydrated and stuff like that. So it's real.
So don't skip your gels is what you're
Don't skip
saying.
your gels. Every 30 minutes, take them.
Yeah. Do you have like any just sheer stats on how much water, how many bananas, how much Gatorade you give out?
Oh man, the CEM folks are really, really good at this stuff. Which I love, right? Because you want all that info. So I'll say this: Chicago has become such a pioneer. When it comes to leading the way and organizing and logistics. And so we know that the morning of, like, how many runners are still on the course, at any given time, which I think is super, super cool. We're constantly on the radio with, the command center, and they're giving us updates on, weather and any incidents that occur and things of that sort, which, I would say after, we're kind of diving into something else, but like after 2007, when, was that famous, heat wave that hit the Chicago Marathon, I felt like that year afterwards, like it was a catalyst. If there was any silver lining, is that Chicago, just really has led the way. And it's, I think, a true testament to Kerry and Mike Nishi and all the CEM folks, because they're consummate professionals. So I wouldn't be able to tell you how much. What I can say is we have
pallets and pallets and pallets.
Pallets and pallets. We have a whole semi truck. It used to be 2 semi trucks, and now they've condensed it. But essentially we have 10 tables on each side, with 4 layers high of cups of water, filled to 50%. After those 10 tables on each side of the street, you have your bananas in between, and then you have another 9 tables on each side of Gatorade, which 4 layers high, right? And if the weather's really hot, and I think you can kind of see on the clip that was just shown a bit ago, we have sponges as well, for the runners, because if it hits a certain degree, like like that morning, like we're in for a warm morning. We may feel cool in the morning, but you just know it's gonna hit a certain time.
So if someone wants to get involved and volunteer at the Pilsen aid stop, how do they do that?
Yeah, great question. And so the Chicago Marathon website does a really good job of, saying click here to volunteer. When you click on the link and on the Chicago Marathon website to volunteer, it'll ask you if you want to volunteer at the expo or if you want to volunteer, on race day out in the course. And so the marathon requires hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volunteers.
So it's actually going through the Chicago Marathon. They don't just send you an email or anything.
Yeah. And so, actually, I take it back. It's not hundreds. It's thousands of volunteers that are needed. And so you could be at the finish line, the start line. If you put out, aid stations, make sure you put aid station 15, the best aid station on the course.
There we go. I've talked with a wide array of people across the city. And one of the reasons that I just love running is because it literally involves everybody. No matter what you look like, like if you can get out there and run, you can do it. I talked with Aaron Ingram of 7 on Sundays and kind of talked about running in the African American community and what that looks like. What does it mean to the Mexican American community in Chicago?
Yeah, great question. I would say, historically, if you look at, I think when people think of Mexicans in sports, they think of soccer. But if you look at, distance running in the 80s and the 90s, there was a lot of great Mexican runners. I would say, even, Kerry Pinkowski will tell you like all these, runners that I've never heard of in my life.
He did that when he was on the podcast.
Yeah. He'll go on a tangent about it, which I love. But there's a lot of really, really old school distance runners that would run marathons. And so, when I not burst onto the scene, when I started, running, you start meeting folks, right? And so Venados Running Club, which is, my running club, has been around since the 80s. And you look at these folks and they've been running marathons for decades. And there's a lineage there. But, as the years have gone on, you're starting to see more and more Latino running clubs pop up, which I just absolutely loved. Midway Mile Chasers, 3 Run 2, Tortugas. There's just Viento and Little Village. The list goes on. And I feel like Mexican running clubs or Latino running clubs have put in like their own spin on running clubs. Like they become, like very family-like, social events.
If you follow Tortugas on Instagram, they eat well after their runs.
You have to, right? Like, tamales and stuff like that. I see them as well, doing their thing. And so like, I feel like it's become it, and I think it's a good segue into running clubs in general, where it's like back in the days, I feel like, when I say back in the days, we're talking like early 2000s or whatever.
Which is crazy.
If you ran with one running club, you kind of like stuck with them for the most part.
Yeah.
And I feel like now, like, if you run with Tortugas on, Sunday mornings, you run with Venados on Wednesdays, and you run with, these guys on Fridays and all that. And the list goes on, which I love. I think it really, kind of creates this more, kind of like social feel to it. And, runners are some of the most friendliest people I've ever met in my life, and some of the coolest relationships I have with people are with, folks that I met through running. And so, I think, to answer your question, I feel like just Latinos have really put like their family, spin on it. Cause, growing up as a Latino, like family is everything. And so I feel like these running clubs have really kind of built this kind of family-like, feel to them.
So last week's guest, Andrew Swatso, he pointed this out to me. Like most runners, are pretty smart people. And I never kind of realized that until, I don't know if you're going to disagree with me here, but like most of these times you show up and you can have pretty good conversations with people, and there's a lot of doctors and lawyers and people in education. I don't know. Now you're looking like you're going to disagree with me.
No, you just made me think. I mean, I think, I've met so many people through running, and I think that's the beauty of running, right? Like all you need is literally, just put one foot in front of the other, you know, and you can have really cool, fancy shoes, but if you don't want to, and you can literally just put one foot in front of the other.
You can run in your bare feet.
And so running, it breaks down, demographic barriers. It breaks down, income and all that. So, you mentioned doctors and all that. Yeah, you could run with one group, and it could be a mixture of engineers, doctors, college educated professionals, and then, blue collar working, blue collar workers that just love running. But you see them all mesh, and you could see them all bond over the sport.
Yeah.
Or you could talk about Chicago sports and, complain about how bad the Bears are doing or whatnot. But I think, sports, I think, brings people together. And food, which is why I feel like, Tortugas and all these folks, like, man, I think food brings so many people together as well.
Yeah, and I think it brings, like, motivated people together. Like people, you have to make a conscious decision to get out of bed, to put on your shoes, to open the front door, to get on the street, to run down the street, to run down another street.
Yeah.
And to me, that's another cool part too.
Totally. And the energy that you get after finishing that workout, it stays with you for a while, which I love, like I hate, I'm a morning person, but it doesn't mean I struggle it doesn't mean I don't struggle to get up. But once I'm up and I get the run going, I'm just like, oh my God,
always feels
this
good.
pace sucks. But, I get it done, and then I feel like a badass. Like, okay, now I'm ready to, get this day started, and it just stays with you.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for stopping by today. You've done so much for running, and I think we'll continue to do that. And the aid station and the 5K is a testament to that. And I will definitely look out for you on 19. I at least want a fist bump. So
we'll be there bright and early. And thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
I do. Before we head out, I want to share, Kevin, your run.
Last Sunday. I will talk about that. So I did want to give a shout out to anyone who did the 20 miles. This weekend was like pretty much this is the peak of the taper. Now the taper begins. I was signed up for the Carrera Ready to Run 20 miler, which started at Montrose Park. supposed to go down to Jackson Park. I didn't really know the rain was coming, so shout out to the Chicago weatherman.
Yeah. And
Basically woke up and I was like, all right, well, we'll still drive down there. I guess we'll just be running through the rain.
It's the dedication, though.
We got to Montrose Park, and like basically like 10 minutes before, they were like, oh, it's canceled. There may be lightning out there. So I said, well, we're just going to run anyway. We're going to do an out and back to Soldier Field. And this is what we ran through. So
but you felt like a badass afterwards. Right?
It was awesome. The first 10 miles was amazing because we had the tailwind going south. It was a light rain, and other people from Carrera were out there running. And I was with my cousin Laura and her friend Katie. And so we had a good group, and it was fun. I had a blast. I was like tweeting, I thought I looked like a badass, but then I actually like went back and like looked after what I tweeted after, and I was like, oh, I don't know. But then we turned around, we went back north, we came around the Shed Aquarium, and you couldn't even see like the first 15 floors of the Sears Tower. And it was like Ghostbusters. And you could just see like the dark rain clouds, and we basically ran back into that. And then that tailwind that we had, we were just straight into it for probably 5 or 6 miles.
Yeah, that's rough.
But I got it done. I mean, I felt great. I thought, okay, if I was able to tackle that, there's no way the Chicago Bears are going to go down to Tampa Bay and lose this game. I was wrong.
Little did you know.
Little did I know.
Yeah.
But I got it done because I just did not want to delay it. We talked about, should we get back in the car and maybe run closer to home? And I said, you know what? Like, the marathon is going to throw you challenges. You don't know what you're going to get.
Totally.
Let's just take this as it comes and tackle this, because if it's raining on Chicago Marathon Day, we'll be ready for it.
Yeah,
so I'm really glad that we did it. I know a lot of other people the people who ran on Saturday had a great day to run, and the people who ran on Sunday. But I think early in this training session, if it was raining, I just wouldn't go out. So like this morning, it was raining, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to go out and run, and got it done. So
it makes you tougher, and I love when you're running and through inclement weather, like 10 degree below zero and all that, and drivers are coming by, and you're going in opposite directions. They're like like this, but you're just like, yeah, I'm on.
That's a great feeling. Yeah, I don't like. I'm fine, kind of like with having that little feeling of superiority, right?
I was going to say, yeah.
Because why else? Why else would you run?
Absolutely.
So, so now the taper begins. It's about getting sleep. It's about getting rest and fueling. And
all the hard work is done. All
Yeah.
the hard work is done, and the beauty is like you can still eat like you're training for 20 miler tomorrow. Like that's the beauty. Your metabolism is just like.
I know that you definitely feel like that. Even like a few days away from a race or from a run, your body's still like freaking out because it's like, I need calories because I don't know if this guy's going to go out on a run.
Like constantly growling and stuff. Yeah. I miss those days. That's what I miss about, running, training for marathons.
There's been a couple of days where I've been driving down here and like eating my lunch in the car at like 10:30. Like it's just
totally.
It's pretty crazy. Hey, by the way, I got a shout out to Sinway Mendoza who hooked us up, our mutual friend who's sitting right here, big Notre Dame fan.
Sinway Mendoza, he's the GOAT. Shout out to him for sure.
He is the man about town. So shout out to Sarah for producing this episode. We'll be back next week, September 26th, with Larry Hawley from WGN, a Chicago Marathon veteran. And then I'm not sure the week after, but we'll do a pre-marathon preview going into it. And it's like 20 days away or something. So crazy. Got this. Thank you for listening to CHGO Marathon. If you're listening to this, you got this. And we'll see you next time.